Hello everyone, X4 here, and welcome to JoJolion chapter 104 review and discussion. And I know guys, I apologize for being a few days late this month. That's just because when the chapter came out, I was finishing up my Jonathan versus Johnny video, and I didn't want to get too distracted and inevitably end up wanting to review JoJolion first. So if you haven't seen that video, definitely be sure to check it out after this one, or just whenever you got the time. It's a lot of fun. But we have other matters to attend to today, which is the newest chapter of JoJolion and the first chapter of the new year. So happy new year, guys. I hope it's better than last year. I bet you haven't heard that one before, but really. So getting on to the chapter, starting with the cover page, because I know you guys have been waiting long enough, so let's just get right into it. We have a bit of a metaphor for what's going on in JoJolion right now, which is the head doctor looming over Morioh, almost as if he's in control of everyone's fate, which pretty much he is at this point, having the power of calamity. And I know that that's the Higashikata estate at the bottom there, at the bottom left, because it is eerily similar to the Eyes of Heaven stage. Like, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Eyes of Heaven over there. So I like how there's a lot of consistency with how the Higashikata estate is laid out. Pretty good cover page, and the chapter title is Endless Calamity Part 10. So before we get into the actual meat of everything, a quick recap from chapter 103. Yasuho has been moved to the top of the kill list of Toru's calamity priorities. Kei finally met up with Josuke in the TG University Hospital and got an attack off on the head doctor where one of Josuke's soap bubbles hit Toru and the head doctor in the side of the head, and we also saw that damage is transferable, which is huge because if Josuke is able to defeat the head doctor, he defeats Toru, so we don't have to worry about Josuke needing to hustle his ass back to the Higashikata estate so he can actually kill this enemy. Damage is transferable, which is great. And another interesting thing was that he was hit by a soap bubble, and one point I was making note of in last chapter review is that every time someone's been hit by one of Josuke's soap bubbles, they have this realization almost. So Mamazuku got hit by it and was like, Josuke, there's things within these bubbles that you cannot see. And then the head doctor got hit by it as well and said the same thing. And also Josuke was hit by his own soap bubbles in the leg. So I thought maybe Josuke would make that connection and be able to actually realize what Rai is saying. Although I wish Rai wasn't so cryptic and before he died was able to just come out and be like, hey Josuke, you have the power of... which we'll see what he has the power of later in this chapter. I don't want to spoil anything too crazy, although I'm sure most of you guys have probably already read it. I hope you've read it before you watch these, but I want to build up the anticipation still. So pretty much for the past 4 months in JoJolion has been leading up to Josuke's new ability essentially, and what is in these soap bubbles that is so powerful and what's alluding to gonna be able to defeat the head doctor. Also guys, we had an emergency. The blue Joy-Con had died and my Switch wasn't plugged in, so we have to switch to the red one. I don't want to throw you guys off or anything, but I guess we're going with red Joy-Con this month, which I prefer blue, but I'll live with red. So getting on to the first page of the new chapter, we see that the head doctor's cane is broken half by Josuke's attack, and Josuke lets out an aura barrage, but not on the head doctor, on more of the low kakaka that is scattered all throughout the room, which I think Araki has been making a big note of right now, and I don't want to make too many assumptions like, oh, this character is going to be healed or something's going to come of this, but I think it's important to establish that Araki has drawn Josuke destroying these vials a lot, and also as we can see in this double page spread here, there is Rokakaka scattered all across the room. It's a room filled with this Rokakaka element, and there is 2 dead people on the ground. Spoilers. But before we get on to who that second dead person could possibly be, we have Mamazuku repeating himself, which is said probably 3 more times throughout this chapter, and it is that, Josuke, you're soft and wet bubbles, there's something within them that you haven't realized, they're lines that spin, they're spherical, and yeah, pretty much the same thing that Mamazuku has been saying since chapter 74, I believe is when we first got that teaser that Josuke's soap bubbles are actually a spinning line. And myself and the community have been going on crazy theories for about 4 years now on what this could possibly be. I had my string theory, I guess you could call it, but we'll see later that it might be a little bit more simple than that, and Josuke has a really strong ability that we have seen before in the series. But getting back to the beginning of the chapter here, we see that the head doctor is pretty confused on what just happened. So this is immediately following Rai saying that, hey Josuke, there's something within your bubbles that cannot be seen, and then the head doctor comes to the conclusion that the world is based on logic and reason. Obviously, there's stands which are supernatural, but at least they exist. So maybe in reality, it's hey, there's things like oxygen and molecules, we don't really know why they exist, but they exist, so they operate based on logic. And that's kind of the way that Toru interprets his stand. He's like, I didn't choose this ability of calamity, this is just what my ability is. And logically, in this world, you cannot hit me. If you try to hit me, you will undergo a calamity. And almost immediately, Toru comes to the conclusion that because he was hit, means that Josuke's attacks are coming from some otherworldly place. what he was attacked by does not exist in this world, which is really confusing to try to like actually think about what that means, but that's kind of the idea that Araki's going for. Because Toru's stand logically means in this world, you can't hit him. It's physically impossible. So the only way we're going to be able to defeat this guy is to bring things in from other worlds that don't follow the logic of this world. And the quote of the month that Araki has thrown out, which is the most JoJo's Bizarre Adventure quote I've ever heard in my entire life. And it's something along the lines of, we're able to win because we have something that doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, it doesn't follow the logic of this world. And it's like, okay, Araki, is that what we're going for? That's what we're going for. The Deus Ex Machina of the century, and the fact that we're using something that literally does not exist. But I don't want to judge anything too far because we haven't really seen the full scope of what Araki's going for here. But that's the general idea. In order to defeat something that cannot be defeated, we have to go beyond the walls of logic and reason and enter other dimensions, essentially. And right after this head doctor inner monologue, we see that Kei Nijimura is able to hand Josuke the cell phone that has Yasuho on it, so we're finally able to see those two linked up together, but not before Kei Nijimura is hit by a calamity and drops dead to the ground, which is really not what I was going to expect from her character, as she was just brought back into the story last chapter. And you guys know in chapter 103 review, I was like, guys, I'm so excited. I can't wait to see Born This Way versus the head doctor. What happens when an unmovable object meets an unstoppable force and two pursuing stands going at each other? It's going to be so cool. Seeing Soft and Wet team up with Born This Way, but no, Araki just shatters my dreams. I'm telling you guys, Araki hates me. I swear, he watches the reviews and he does the exact opposite of what I want to happen, and it just breaks my heart. So as much as I wanted to see Kei and Josuke team up and just more of Kei in the story, she's dead. She's taken out far too soon, and it's interesting. It's like, why would Araki introduce this character that hasn't been seen in like 20 chapters, 30 chapters, maybe even more than that, just to immediately have her die? But honestly, we are leading up to like this main conflict between Josuke and the head doctor, so I guess it's fine for Kei to die in an almost sacrificial manner, in a way that she like, her purpose was to get Josuke in contact with Yasuho so they can sort of exchange information and figure out a way to beat the head doctor, because as we'll see later in this chapter, it really boils to that part where it's like Josuke versus head doctor. So I guess it's okay that Kei's not there, and it might have like thrown off the vibe and made us have too many questions if Kei was there. Like, hey, why doesn't Kei help Josuke when we're really supposed to focus on Josuke versus head doctor? So not the worst thing that possibly happened, and I'm honestly not upset by this either. Like, I know a lot of people were like, oh, so sad Kei died. Like, she could have been dead 30 chapters ago and it really wouldn't have made a difference. As far as we were concerned, like 3 chapters ago, she was probably never even going to come back, so it doesn't really matter that she comes back and then dies immediately. She was a cool character. She had some cool moments in JoJolion, but it honestly, to me, doesn't really make much of a difference if she's dead or alive. So I guess I'm fine with this, and logically it does make sense because she did attack the head doctor, and she pretty much did the same exact thing that Mamazuku did, so it's only consistent that she would also die, because then we might have the question like, well, why the hell does Mamazuku die if Kei can just come in and attack the thing consequence-free? And that's another thing we mentioned in the last chapter, is that, whoa, Kei was actually able to attack the head doctor. How did she do this? Well, it was nothing special. She's now experiencing the effects of the calamity, so her stand didn't really bypass the ability whatsoever, and she's dead. And after we see her fall to the ground and Born This Way crumbling almost like a rock human, which is actually pretty cool, we get some interesting dialogue from Toru. And it's again him saying like, this absolutely cannot be possible. If I'm being attacked by something, it has to be something that's not physically in this world and doesn't abide by this logic. And it almost seems like Toru has an idea of what this could possibly be, because he's hit by the soap bubbles, and then in Toru's mind he says, they're spinning, you say? The soap bubbles. Could it be ... So we don't get any more of that within this chapter, and Toru looks scared out of his damn mind. And we also see he's bleeding, the damage transfers, so Toru is really scared of Josuke right now, and he kind of plays it pretty cool, and he tries to get out of the situation, and he tells Yasuho that like, well, I'm going to leave Josuke alone, not because I'm scared or anything, just because I don't really understand what's going on. But it seems like Toru has an idea of what he's going up against. So possibly Toru has seen something like this before, or he already knows what Josuke's ability is before even he does. So pretty interesting bit of dialogue there with Toru saying, could it be? So I would love to see what Toru thinks it is, which is probably what it actually is. And I know my dialogue in this chapter review is probably sounding pretty cryptic, but it's really the only way I can describe what's going on in the chapter right now, because Araki is just talking about like ifs and whats and whens, because something's working here, something's happening, but it doesn't exist, is essentially what we're dealing with. So continuing on, we see that Josuke is actually able to link up with Yasuho, and they're finally able to talk to each other, which has probably been like 10, 15 chapters since Josuke and Yasuho have actually been together, which is really nice to see them be able to relay information like, hey, Josuke, by the way, Toru's the stand user, because I forgot that Josuke doesn't know that, because Josuke has been at the TG University Hospital waiting for the head doctor and then eventually fighting the head doctor for a pretty long time. So it's really nice that Josuke is able to understand more about this guy right now and who the user is, and maybe have some sort of connection between that, and also be able to protect Yasuho in some way, knowing her situation as well. And Yasuho just explains that Toru's the stand user. He's standing right in front of me. I can see him. I'm probably gonna die next, by the way. And also, Araki actually makes comment of why Toru has been like involved in Yasuo's life for a really long time, which I was always questioning. It's like, if Toru really is just the big bad guy of the part, and all he really wants is the new Rokakaka and money, why the hell did he go in disguise and like follow Yasuo around her entire life and like make such a connection with her? And Araki doesn't really explain why he does it, but he makes a confirmation that he did do it. So it seems like Araki might explore on that a little bit in the future and tell us why Toru is actually so obsessed with Yasuo, but at least he makes note of it in this chapter and establishes that whole idea that Toru has been an urban gorilla almost, blending in with society and living among us for a pretty long time, which we kind of already knew from Mamazuku's flashback. And we also see that as Yasuo is explaining this, Josuke is making connections in his mind right here, and we see that Toru was actually in the ambulance when poor Tom was shot through the head and the fake branch was taken. We know that Jobin had used Paper Moon Cane and Tsurugi to disguise the fake branch. This was way long ago, but that was actually a really good arc. But we see now that what poor Tom, what was shot through him, it looked like he was sniped, was probably a calamity because Toru was so close. So a good confirmation there, and I didn't really care about what was going on there back in the day, and I never really worried about it, but it seems like it's confirmed now that poor Tom was killed by a head doctor calamity. But continuing on with chapter 104, we see that Toru is calling off his attack on Josuke because he now realizes that he's actually able to hurt him in some way. So he just completely calls off the head doctor, and he tells Yasuo that Josuke's been pretty annoying, but right now my intuition is telling me to just completely stay away from him, and he really doesn't need to fight Josuke, because what Toru wants is the new Rokakaka, which is right in front of him now at the Higashikata estate. So really logically, it does make sense that he wouldn't need to fight Josuke at all. The only reason he's really fighting him right now is for the potential to kill him and just get him out of the way. But he sees that Josuke might actually be throwing off his mojo in a way and might actually be a threat to him. So he's kind of like, well, I'm not even going to take the risk, not even going to worry about it, just going to leave him alone, which is pretty smart on Toru's end. And he's now focused on just the new Rokakaka. And it's really funny how Toru is like, you can tell that he's lived with this ability for so long, and he's so used to just like not really ever attacking anyone. And because he describes to Yasuo that Yasuo is like getting in the way of everything, and Yasuo's right in front of Toru. Why doesn't Toru just kill her himself? He's like, Yasuo, you've been being like really annoying. You called K, you're getting in the way. You're the reason why I'm pretty much injured right now. And a calamity is going to encounter you very soon, and the new Rokakaka is right in front of her. And he's like, hey, can you do me a favor and like hand over that new Rokakaka, because something's gonna happen here and you're gonna die, and I don't want that thing to get hurt, so can I please just hand that over? It's like, why don't you just do it yourself, Toru? You're so reliant on this calamity ability. It gives me hope for an eventual scene where Toru is without his ability, and he's just kind of like part 3 minor villain where he's like, no, stay away from me, and he's just so weak without it, because he really probably has never done any real fighting in his entire life. He's never needed to use his stand ever. It's just a complete automatic ability that makes him immune to pretty much everything. So if he didn't have that ability, he would probably be one of the weakest characters ever. So right before Toru tries to grab the new Rokakaka from Yasuo, we switch back over to Josuke's perspective, who is on the phone and in the know of everything that's going on in the Higashikata estate right now, and we get the ghost Jobro moment where we can see the hands of Mamazuku and Kei grabbing onto Josuke right here, where we have Mamazuku in doggy style form and just Kei's normal hands. Although Kei doesn't really say anything here, and I was wondering, it's like, okay, we see Kei's hands grab Josuke, but then we see dialogue from Mamazuku. Unless I don't really know how Araki's trying to portray this. Maybe it's like both of them talking at the same time, or both of them contributing to this conversation. And again, it is Mamazuku giving Josuke a dying message of that he has the ability to defeat Toru with his soap bubbles, saying that if the head doctor is attempting to leave the room right now, there is a reason for it. He senses danger coming from you, and it's because of those invisible things that spin your soap bubbles. Use them to defeat them. Yeah, Mamazuku, you've said this a lot. If Mamazuku apparently knows so much about this, why doesn't he just get rid of all this cryptic messaging and just tell Josuke what the hell he has. I mean, unless Mamazuku really just doesn't really know, but he knows there's something there, even say that. Be like, Josuke, I don't really know what you have, but it's something. But he doesn't even say that. He's just being so cryptic. And it's like, God, Mamazuku, if you're gonna die right now, at least tell Josuke what the hell he's dealing with here. But thankfully, Mamazuku's dying message isn't for nothing, as Josuke pretty much gets the idea, and he's that I have something, I just need to control it. But he doesn't know how to control it because they're invisible. But as we'll see, it's just, he kind of instinctually knows how to use it, maybe from someone in his lineage. Maybe someone by the name of Johnny Joestar, for example, who potentially passed down to Josuke an ability so powerful that can surpass even the logic of this world. As Mamazuku explains again, that the lines are spinning. It's because they don't exist in this world that they can surpass it. They can surpass his ability for sure. And I'm really excited to get onto what this is, as it is kind of revealed at the very end of the chapter. But before that, we have some more stuff going on between Toru and Yasuho, where Toru is just trying to take this fruit away from Yasuho, and he explains that a calamity is going to encounter you very quick, and he's just kind of like being very rude to Yasuho. And then Joshu has a moment where he's like, stop being rude to Yasuho. If anyone talks to Yasuho like this, you're my enemy. I'm going to kill you. And Joshu goes to reach after him. A little bit of padding or extra stuff within this chapter before we get on to the main reveal at the end. But they both look up and they see this thing flying through the sky. And right before Joshu was trying to attack Toru, they see that the plane door from chapter 103 is hurling towards them as we speak. And there actually is a consequence for Joshu, who tried to attack Toru, and we see that a leaf comes and chops down one of his fingers that actually got pretty close to Toru. And I like how Toru is all like, my ability is logical. It follows the rules of logic. You know, all the way it works is that if you try to attack me, you undergo a calamity. But we see here that a freaking leaf is able to cut off Joshu's finger. And it's like, well, your stand doesn't obey logic at all. It's like manipulating features of things in nature. So whatever, Toru, whatever, man. And the last bit in the sequence between Yasuho and Toru is that Yasuho stumbles back and Joshu is now encumbered because of this thing that happened to his finger, and Toru is able to pick up the new Rokakaka and able to foreseeably be able to just leave now with it unless Josuke has something to say about it, and is able to attack the head doctor that would then affect Toru himself. And we see that the plane door is falling down, rushing towards them, and this really put into perspective how quickly we're snowballing in JoJolion, essentially. The time left between something huge happening is like 10 seconds if we're going in like real time of the manga, because what is going to happen with this plane door? It's either going to hit Yasuho and kill Yasuho, or it's going to hit Toru and kill Toru. Maybe it just hits the ground and doesn't kill anyone and they're like, oh, we're saved. But there's been so much buildup to this plane door. I feel like it has to have some impact on the characters some way. Maybe it kills Joshu, but I really think it's either going to hit Toru or Yasuho. And I really hope it doesn't hit Yasuho. But now that I'm talking about this, realistically, another thing I could see is that Josuke does some sort of attack on the head doctor, and it causes his ability to stop working, and then the plane door just doesn't hit anyone because the calamity was called off, essentially. And I really don't want Toru to be hit by this plane door because I feel like Josuke deserves this win. I feel like Josuke should get the finishing blow, not some, random event similar to the ambulance in part 4. But now moving on to the final sequence of this chapter that I know most of you guys have probably been waiting for, and there's just so much to talk about here. So we see that Josuke assumes a pose, and a spinning ball appears from his fingertip, and he's aiming it directly at the head doctor. We get all these cool sound effects like whoosh, 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 like the ball is spinning. And then we get the last bit of dialogue in this chapter, which is again repetition of Mamazuku's message, but with a little bit more details here. So I'll read it verbatim. There are things you cannot see, Josuke. They are different from your visible soap bubbles at your fingertips. They are something that does not exist in this world. But the fact that they don't exist means they can go beyond reason. And then probably the most important dialogue here is that they can even overcome a curse. They can break the Higashikata family's curse and Hali-san's curse as well. And we see that Josuke, assumingly using that ability that was just described, launches a shot at the head doctor, and right after that, a soap bubble emerges from his birthmark. And as Araki does, there are some author notes or a bit of narration that alludes to what could be happening, and it says that birthmark, it's coming from there, so we're focusing on the bubble coming from the birthmark as well. So guys, from this dialogue here, the conclusion I've come to is that Josuke is able to control the infinite rotation. That's really the only logical thing I can see coming from this ability here for a few reasons. So first of all, this ability goes beyond logic. It goes beyond the reality of this world. And as we saw, and it's important to note of that Araki is making a lot of parallels to Johnny Joestar here. We're taking a note of the birthmark, and the only other Joestar really that has an ability like this that's existed in this universe is Johnny Joestar, as well as Josuke has assumed the position. He's literally in the same exact pose as Johnny was when Johnny shot Valentine into infinity, and we had Gyro behind him being like, Johnny, use the infinite rotation, and the way that Mamazuku is like, you have this ability that goes beyond this world. So like, this exactly parallels the moments right before Valentine was shot into infinity, essentially. And the only logical conclusion I can come to, even though we're talking about something that defies logic and goes beyond reason, is that the ability Josuke has that doesn't exist in this world is the infinite rotation. Because when we saw when Valentine was shot into infinity, he was traveling between dimensions, between worlds, and going all beyond reason. So it only makes sense that the ability Josuke is controlling here is the infinite rotation, and he's accessing powers from different dimensions or different worlds or something like that. And I know that sounds like a bit crazy, and a little bit more evidence to this theory is the dialogue where it says they can even overcome a curse, which is like huge. Like that is like what the whole story of JoJolion is about, is overcoming the Higashikata curse. And the only time we have ever seen anything be able to overcome the curse before is with the Holy Corpse as well as the infinite rotation. And I'm sure we're not talking about the Holy Corpse here, because in JoJolion, in the Legend of Johnny Joestar, we saw that when Johnny used the corpse to heal his wife Rina Higashikata, the curse was then transferred from Rina onto George Joestar, his child. And Johnny was able to remove the curse from his son by shooting himself with the infinite rotation. So we've seen that the infinite rotation is able to overcome a curse. We see that Josuke is assuming the position, shooting something from his fingertips that is the spin, and it also is going to be able to overcome this curse. So for me, I'm sure Araki might have something else planned, but it only seems reasonable at this point that Josuke is using the infinite rotation. And I could totally see in the next chapter that I'm sure this attack right here, it's got to make contact with the head doctor. Because if you think about it right now, if Josuke isn't able to stop the head doctor right now, Toru wins. Toru has the new Rokakaka. He can leave. He can disappear into obscurity and just completely avoid these characters for all of eternity and enact whatever he wants to do with the new Rokakaka, and they would have no way of finding him. So this is like the last line of defense right here. Josuke has to stop the head doctor. And just imagine in the next chapter, the head doctor just starts spinning like Valentine did at the end of part 7. So I don't want to make too many assumptions right now on why Josuke has this ability, because we don't even really know if we're dealing with the infinite rotation here. But it really seems like that's what it is. I know other people were saying that it could be his plunder ability that we're talking about here, but because the soap bubble is coming from his birthmark, and people have made the theory that the only time Josuke has ever used his plunder ability is when the soap bubble comes from his birthmark. And maybe his plunder ability is this very out of this world ability where it doesn't exist in reality, and that's what we're dealing with here. And Josuke just does something like, oh, I stole your stand away from you, I stole your ability of calamity. But that would just seem so lame in a way, because we've seen plunder be used many other times before. And also Josefumi's ability was like a very underwhelming version of the plunder. So we haven't seen plunder in a long time. This might be plunder, but Araki's definitely focusing on the spin here, and he's making it clear that Josuke is a spin user, and his ability is like the most powerful version of the spin. So it's probably going to be like the infinite rotation, maybe a new version of it or something. But I have a lot of questions here, like why the hell can Josuke use the spin in general, let alone the most powerful version of the spin that is probably the infinite rotation, assuming they've said it can even overcome a curse. I don't want to focus too much on it right now because we haven't seen this full scope of things, but if Josuke is able to use the infinite rotation, it would literally make no sense whatsoever, and it would kind of feel cheap because there's been no build-up to it, and Josuke doesn't even really understand the spin at all. He doesn't even know what it is. So for him to be able to control the strongest version of it, which involves going through many lessons and really becoming one with the spin, it wouldn't make much sense to me unless this ability is just completely inherited from Johnny. So I don't want to give Araki too much flack and make this seem like it's something bad when we don't really know what it is in the first place. But the one thing I'm disappointed by is that because this fight has been, it's not even a fight. The Wonder of You and the Endless Calamity arc has been going on for so long, and there hasn't really ever been a fight so far. It's pretty much just people encountering calamities. And we've spent so much time on this guy. I would love to see like a 10 chapter or like a 20 chapter fight, but really all we've seen is 20 chapters of people encountering calamities. So if Josuke is just going to one-shot the head doctor with this ability that essentially came out of nowhere, I would honestly be very disappointed because, like, I don't know, Araki had all of this time, and we've spent all this time, and for all of this to lead up to essentially right now what looks like a Deus Ex Machina, unless there is some crazy explanation that Araki hasn't done yet, I'm really concerned for how JoJolion is going to continue from this point on, and what this is that Josuke has. I really don't want it to just never be explained, but unless we go back in time and we see some sort of flashback and maybe an explanation for how Josuke is able to wield this ability that seems so powerful that can even overcome a curse, I don't know. And especially the fact that Josuke has had this ability for essentially the entire part, it's almost like, what was the point of everything if Josuke could have just cured the curse from day one? Because we saw that Mamazuku knew of Josuke's ability before he even went through this Rokaka evolution when he said that Josuke's soap bubbles are spinning, so why didn't Mamazuku say anything sooner? I have a lot of questions, and I hope they're explained, or at least there's some sort of resolution to how Josuke has such a powerful ability. And I don't even want to say it's so powerful because we still don't even know what it is, but for now, I'm pretty safe on saying it's some sort of variation or some part of the infinite rotation. But as for now, that's about all I can say about what I think Josuke's new ability is going to be, and possibly the effects it will have on the head doctor and Toru. But guys, the thing I'm most excited for is for Araki to just come out and flat out say what the ability is in the next chapter, or even if it's not spoken, us just being able to see the effects of this. And I really hope it's not something like it's just a bullet where it bypasses the calamity and we just hit the head doctor and then Toru was like, oh, I was hit. Oh, I'm dead now. Like, Araki's got to come up with something really big in the next few chapters here to make this story that we've invested so much time into to come to a conclusion that is reasonable, that is satisfying in some way. So I'm very indifferent on the end of this chapter here, as it really seems like a really OP ability coming out of nowhere, and not even coming out of nowhere, but the fact that Mamazuku has known about it for so long and never told Josuke, as well as it seems like it's an ability Josuke has had since day one that he just hasn't used. So I'm nervous, I'm excited, and scared all at the same time. But as for now, guys, that is going to be JoJolion Chapter 104 review and discussion. I hope it was worth the wait, as there is just there's a lot going on here. But guys, for now, thank you all so much for watching. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more and my next future JoJolion reviews, as well as other JoJo content. Join the Joestar Cafe Discord down below, where we discuss new chapters as they come out, and also the chapters throughout the month and other JoJo discussion as well. As well as you can follow me on Twitter for memes like how the head doctor was talking a lot like Ben Shapiro this chapter, which was, I was memeing with you guys on Discord and Twitter about that, which was kind of true. The head doctor and Toru kept going on, like, literally sounded like some Ben Shapiro ass dialogue. Yeah, Toru confirmed Ben Shapiro. But for now, guys, I hope to see you all in JoJolion Chapter 105 review, as well as in all of my future videos. So thank you guys so much for watching again. And yeah, breakfreesupply.com, get some merch, support the channel, follow me on Twitter, all that good stuff. And I'll talk to you guys all real soon. All right, thank you for watching. Have a good day and peace.